Hey, everybody. Give me Mammoth Tug. Get you set up on the all messages. Robert, how are you this evening? And hello to the other 5 of you out there. All right, let's get right down to business. Tonight's not going to be a terribly long live stream. We'll do a quick feeding. And I've been wanting all day to do some work on the 125, but I decided I would put it off till this evening and make a live stream out of it. So we're going to turn the filter off on the 125. We're going to install a couple of sponge filters, and I may even throw a small power head in there while we're at it for good measure. All right, I'm still trying to work my way through these pellets. And we'll put some food up inside the tower, see if anybody heads on up in there. Cornish, how are you this evening? Arc Knight, hello. All right, I still need to get materials together, so I'll let you look at the pond for a few minutes, then we'll look at the fancy goldfish, and I'll start getting stuff together. Actually, I'm going to wipe down the glass on the fancy goldfish while you're doing that. This is one of my unheated tanks, and it's so cold compared to the other ones when I stick my hand in it. It's probably like 72 degrees. It's only a few degrees colder than the other ones, but it feels freezing. It's another reason to limit tank mates with the goldfish. They've got to be fish that can tolerate the cooler waters. Now, again, I don't keep them in, the water that they can tolerate, which is, as long as it's still liquid, goldfish can live in it. They live under the ice in the winter. But even at room temperature, 68, 70 degrees sometimes, it's a bit chilly. Surprised all the tropical fish in the pond you're looking at have done well over the years, because that's an unheated pond. And it's all the way down on floor level, so that one's really gets down to temperature overnight. I'll actually hit it with the laser gun here in a second and see what it says. It's probably the same temperature as this tank. I was actually thinking about adjusting the lighting on this tank too. I really don't like the lighting that's on it at all. But I was thinking if I added a third light and put a 2700K on there, I would get a blend of the two. And that way we'd see the, bluer end of the spectrum in there would light up. But there's not a lot in that tank that really needs that blue end of the spectrum. A lot of the colors and everything in that tank are earth tones. And so a little bit of red in there, I think, would make everything pop. But I don't want so much red in there that it's just, just the 2700K, because then it looks like sunset on the tank. Pond Puppies, Neil, hello, hello. All right, let's get you moved over to the fancy goldfish tank. Actually, let's turn this light off first. And while you're watching this tank, I will go and get my stuff that I need. I don't know why my camera looks straight up and down, but the screen looks crooked. And when I make the screen look crooked, then my camera doesn't look right. So I'm going to go by what the screen looks like and not the camera. So that's level enough. And tonight we're going to put some of those flakes in here. And at some point they'll figure out they're in there and start gobbling them up. All right, let me find my roll of silicone tubing. Check. And I've already got the air pump I'm going to use in there. I've got scissors in here. And somewhere I've got those sponge filters, and we're going to put 2 of them in there. So this is what we're putting in there. I got a 4-pack of these for like $16 or something. So these are adjustable if you want to angle them downwards, which I think I'm probably going to do on the 125 to get the intakes lower in the water. And then this part is adjustable. So you can raise it up as much as you want. And of course you can rotate the top, or you can just simply take that off and just have the bubbles go straight up. So these are pretty neat. You just connect your air hose to this little line right there, and that's it. Simple as that. So they're nice, neat, simple little, they come with suction cups, little places for the suction cups on the back. And again, super cheap. And if you're running a larger air pump with, you know, a manifold or something on it, you could run a bunch of these for very little money. What I'm trying to do is cut down on my electrical costs, filter material, time, maintenance. It's just, if something's not necessary on my tank, I'm just not really going to have it on there. And a lot of my tanks just don't really need their filters. My filters at the end of the day don't really do much more than serve as very elaborate power heads. And so why not just take them off and put a power head on instead? I actually made a little bit of hash oil today. I know it doesn't look very good. It's really dark, but it tastes okay. It's really dark like that because I took that shit that I get from the store that I don't like. It was the Afghan skunk #1. And I had 2 little nugs left that were like the size of marbles. And so I soaked them in hexane and I crushed them and smashed them and wrung it out. And like I really did a serious extraction off of it so I could get as much as possible out of the very little bit of weed I got. So I got 0.7 grams out of it. But again, it's really dark. So very flavorful. Not a bad flavor. It actually tastes a lot like the plant, like the flower, like the way it smells. So I got a lot of that flavor coming through. But there's a lot of, you know, plant type flavor in there as well because of the super duper extraction that I did. But let me go through my little warm up cycle here, and then we'll do a dab, and then we'll move over and get started on the 125. All right, dab complete. Let that turn itself off. All right, let's get to this. Actually, let's feed the tank first. And then once they're done feeding, I'll go ahead and start working in there. So one thing I have been doing, and we'll do that before we start messing with the filter and everything, because wow, this tank feels so warm compared to the other one. It feels like bath water. Now let me go get my laser gun and see what it says. This one should be 76 degrees. That's what it's set for, and that's what the little Hygger temperature gauge says it is. All right, the pond is 73.4. The fancy goldfish tank is 71.9. So somehow the fancy goldfish tank is much cooler than the pond. Maybe it's that big ass fucking light that I'm just cranking on it all day long. Maybe that heats it up. Plus I have that 2 big pumps in there. Maybe those pumps are adding a little bit of heat as well. Any electrical device you put in there. 75.2 for this tank. So that's close enough. The Hygger says it's 76, so that's within a degree. But I wonder why the pond is so warm. I guess it is probably those 2 big pumps in there. Again, those electrical motors generate heat. It's not a lot, but it is heat, and that gets cooled off by the pond. You know, the water is absorbing that heat. And then, of course, I have a big 200-watt LED above it. And that thing, if you got it too close to a piece of paper, probably set it on fire. It's so hot. It's actually got like cooling fins and heat sinks and then 2 fans on the inside keeping the LEDs cool. So that thing generates a lot of heat too, which shines straight down on the tank. But what I've been doing is once or twice a week, I've been getting in there with my siphon hose, and I got a couple spots where the crud really seems to collect, and I'm just vacuuming that out and done. I pull like a quart of water out in you know, the whole process, maybe a half gallon. And I've been doing that once or twice a week now, and the tank is cleaner. I don't know if you can tell how nice and clean that gravel looks, relatively speaking. But it's cleaner now than it's ever been, just from that little tiny bit of basic vacuuming it out once in a while. I designed it to have sort of collection areas that would make it easy to do this, but I never bothered until I did like a big water change. Then I would get in there, and by then it was always a huge pile of stuff. So clearly, even when the filter is fully functional and it's a fresh filter that's been changed recently, it's still not picking that stuff up off the bottom and out of the tank. So again, what is that filter actually accomplishing for me? Not a lot. I'll show you how much water is flowing out of it right now, partially because the intake is all clogged up. Another issue, I never get in there and unclog the intake. And then, of course, the filter itself is all clogged up. So that's all the water I've got flowing out of there right now. And that's, I can't really move this log out of the way too much. But if you see down there, that is the spray bar would connect to this end. So that's just an open tube with the water coming out. And with the filter completely new and the intake completely clean, I get a pretty good amount of flow coming off of it. But even when it's at optimum, I'm getting as much flow coming off of this as I ever got coming out of that filter. So again, why have all that elaborate bullshit with this big canister filter in the back just to give me a little bit of water flow and no filtration? Just take the damn thing off of there and put some sponge filters on it. I'll get more oxygenation in the water, or at least I'll get more gas exchange. I have two small air stones on there now. One is over by the filter we were just looking at. It's almost clogged up. If you look closely, you can see a little bit of bubbles rising from it. So that's not much in the way of aeration in this big 125. And then I have a bar in the back. It's like 8 inches long or a foot long under the gravel. And I don't know if it's getting clogged or I don't know if the pump's getting old, but it like builds up pressure, and every so often like a big bunch of bubbles will come bubbling out of it, and then it'll just stop again. It's almost like a, you know, like the pressure has to build up, and then you get a big release, and then you wait until the pressure builds up again. So that's not doing a lot. So we got a new pump. I'll look at that other pump once I get it off of there. If it's still functional, I can just use it as a spare. So we've got pump that's for a 100-gallon tank. It's got the 2 outlets on it. So it's 2 individual pumps side by side. So each outlet is its own pump. And I'll put 1 line on each, and we'll put 2 air filters in here, or 2 sponge filters in there. And we'll just disconnect that canister filter altogether. All right, let me see where I was. Hey, Brian. East Tennessee, nice. You guys getting weather down there? Well, if that's true, Art, then those goldfish must be super susceptible to the THC because everybody in here must get the same amount. You can get an okay reading off of water. I don't do it necessarily off the surface. I take it the temperature in several different spots. I will hit either woodwork that's directly below the surface, or I'll hit leaves that are directly below the surface. You can shoot the glass, and that'll give you within a degree of what the actual tank temperature is, even though UV doesn't go through glass. IR doesn't go through glass, but the glass itself is basically the same temperature as the tank. So see, when I shoot it, it's slightly cooler. It's giving me 74.3. Whereas if I shoot the moss right at the edge of the water, 74.3. So same exact temperature. Now, if I hit this leaf over here under the light, 74.4. Now, if I shoot straight down into the middle of the tank, I'm getting 74.4, 74.6. So I've done a million tests and comparisons and so on and so forth, and it always comes out the same way. Let me shoot the black plastic right here. The black plastic is 74.4, 74.6. So the glass, the black plastic, the leaves, the moss, the water, I'm getting the same temperature on all of it. So either this doesn't work at all, or it's working just fine on all of that stuff. Now, I was going to vac all that up, but you can see how that just got kicked up and swirled all around. Yeah, I am too. We had like a week of summer, and then it just went away, and we've gone back to like early spring. I'm not complaining. The temperature's been in the 40s and 50s, but it's been windy and rainy and gray and overcast. Tomorrow we're supposed to have like 75-mile-an-hour winds. I saw tonight that the Upper Peninsula in Michigan's expecting 40 inches of snow. And so that's heading my way tomorrow, but I don't think we're getting the snow. I think we're just going to get a lot of wind from it. But they're getting 40 inches of snow with 70-mile-an-hour winds. So that certainly qualifies as an official blizzard. Yeah, Neil, I know what you're saying, though. That's why I've done so much testing on it or whatever, is because I know that you can't trust the way those thermometers read the surface of certain things. I'll tell you the thing that you'll really have trouble with if you're trying to get the measurement with one of those IR laser guns is anything shiny. If you try to like shoot a piece of stainless steel, because of the way it reflects light off of it, you just won't get an accurate reading. I did a test one time to show people that while you can measure the temperature of the glass, you can't measure through the glass. And it was a really easy demonstration. I took a empty 10-gallon tank and I set an oil lamp in it, like the kind of lamp you put on your table with the little wick that adjusts up and down. I set it in there. And of course, when I was shooting the lamp, I was getting, 500, 600 degrees. And then I angled the gun like just through the glass, and I was getting room temperature because the surface of the glass is what I was measuring. And even though I was pointing it directly at a flame, I was still getting the surface temperature of the glass because the IR was not passing through it. So I have done a lot of experimenting with those, laser guns just to find out exactly how they do work and what they work on and don't work on. Yeah, anything really shiny, you're not going to be able to get a good reading off of it. Yeah, we kind of did the same thing, Neo. I went from being like, oh God, I'm so glad this cold weather is gone to like, holy shit, I wish it would cool down a little bit, because we got up into the mid 80s and we were in like, the teens a week and a half earlier. So the 80s felt like I was on the surface of the sun. I was outside sweating. So we'll see what happens, what the summer winds up being like. I realized today that we're actually 6 days away from the first day of spring, so we're officially within a week of actual springtime. So I'm stoked about that. All right, I should have more suction cups here. It seems like I'm missing 3 of them. God damn it. Oh, there's 1. Oh, there's 2. Oh, there's all 3. Nice. Never mind. We're good. All right, first thing I'm going to do is get these sponge filters put together with the little suction cups on the back. I think I'm going to put the hose on them before I put them in the tank, because the hose is kind of hard to get on there. It's a little small for the plastic nipple on here, and I got to really stretch it out to fit it over there. So we'll do that first, and then we'll submerge them. I'm not going to worry about vacuuming that out tonight, but what we are going to do is close the valve on the filter. And I'm going to go unplug that filter, and hopefully we'll be pretty much done with it at that point. Let's see, where the hell is that plugged in? Oh, I got to actually come around this way to get it unplugged. I got a friggin' disaster area's worth of plugs and wires and shit going around through this basement. Got like 94 different plug strips with plug strips plugged into plug strips. It's a mess. If I ever, Laura's seen some of it, but if she ever really saw all of what my electrical wiring down here looked like, she'd probably have to lay down for a while, catch her breath. All right. So I got a good deal. I got real flexible, soft silicone airline, and I got 50 feet of it for like $11 or $9 or something like that. And it's black, so you can't notice it, and it's nice and flexible, so it doesn't get all kinky and weird in the tank. And I'll let you make whatever you want of that statement too. All right, let me get this on here. The one downside to it is if you do have to get it on something that's slightly larger, you really got to fight it to get it on there. Whereas the cheap vinyl tubing, you can just warm that up and then sort of expand the end with the tip of a pencil or something and open it up. This gets on there eventually. You just got to work at it a little bit. All right, we're going to turn these downward. And I'm going to leave I'll cut the length of the wire or the hose once I see how much I actually need. All right, let's take this filter out. So that's hardly doing anything at all. It's probably just an ancient air stone. The filter itself, the pump itself is probably doing fine. So let's put this in here. Squeeze the sponges a few times to get some of the air out of them. Oh, you know what? Let's also get a razor blade so I can scrape the glass before I put the suction cups on them. I'll be wasting my time if I don't. I've still not gone through this package of razor blades that I bought like real early on in my fish keeping hobby. I bought a 100-pack at the Walmart for $5 or whatever it was. They're just little single straight edge razor blades. I got a 100-pack of them. Like I said, I still haven't gone through all of them yet. All right, calm down, fish. I know you're freaking out. Just deal with it for a minute. All right, I don't know exactly where these suction cups are going to go, so we'll just clear a nice area. Wouldn't be a bad idea to come back here with the vac. There's another area in the corner here that's got a bunch of crud piled up in it. But the beauty about that other spot is as long as there's water flowing around the tank, even if I don't get all the areas, the fish will eventually kick this stuff up, and then some of that settles down over there, and gradually I'll get less and less of it in the tank. All right. I don't even think I want to put these down like that. We're just going to put them up normal style. And I'm going to go down to about there, I think. All right, I want the water to flow away from it. So we're going to need this much. Let me get my scissors. Grab the air pump while I'm here. All right, like I said, I think there's probably nothing wrong with this pump. But we're going to go ahead and unhook this one. And I don't know how well you can see it or not, but this is the little bar I had under there. It looks like it's a 6-inch. All right, let's get all this shit out of the way. All right, we're going to plug it in and we'll see what we get. Should get some nice airflow. No, it's not a ton, but it's definitely airflow. I'm definitely going to have to put a power head on there. We're not going to, even with 2 of these, I'm not going to get a lot of airflow coming out or a lot of water flow coming out of them. So let's get the next one put in. And then we'll get on with some feeding real quick and we'll wrap it up for the night. I'll move the camera here in just a second. I'm working down this end of the tank now. Just got to get this on here. There we go. Oops. All right, let's see. That is the temperature probe for the heater. That's the cord for the power head. Scrape the glass. Where do I want to put this? I guess we'll put it over here. All right, cut that hose, get this one attached, and we will be good. And I don't know if I mentioned it already. I know I thought about it, but I don't know if I've verbalized, but I will get the check valves. I'm not going to worry about it tonight. Well, maybe I will. But I will put check valves on these to keep them from backflowing. All right, that was that. That was about as easy as it gets. And that should keep both of them pretty well hidden from sight. Leave my arm dried off and we'll have a look at it. Well, I can already tell you from walking back in the room that you definitely can't notice that one back there, really. You got to really get down and look. You can see it back there, and then all you really notice is the white bubbles rising. It is a little crooked. That's going to annoy me. There we go. Fixed. And my arm's all wet again. And then that one back there, again, you don't really notice much of it except for the bubble column rising up. Those black sponges and the black hardware make it pretty nondescript, but we can see that there's not a whole lot of water flow coming out of them. I don't know. This one doesn't look like it's flowing right. That is really, really not much water at all. This one actually looks a little better. You can see that's got some bubbles flowing across the surface. Well, you can kind of see that. Hang on, let me turn that light on. So again, not a ton, but that doesn't look terrible. That don't look right. That's just some little bubbles here. If we look at the other ones that I've got, you can see what that's doing. You know, this one's actually got visible flow coming off of it. So I'm going to have to figure out why that one's barely moving any air through it. Maybe there's a kink in the line or something. Let me go check real quick. It might be something simple. All right, that's about all we were doing on that. I'll have to find a suitable power head. I might have one in the other room. I might have to buy one. But I'm going to put a power head down here in this corner, blowing forwards and forward and sort of up. So it'll cause the, you know, I'll keep that clockwise water flow going through the tank. Ah, damn it. My tripod finally broke. Well, you're not going to be able to get raised up. You have to be in the lowest position for the rest of the night because the thumb screw that holds it up just broke. Well, I finally ordered some more Vibrobites today. And they were, after tax, was $74, but I used all my damn points, so I still paid a little over 50, but I used to get them for a little over 50. I think the Vibrobites were like closer to 60, and then the kilo of the high carry algae wafers was usually around 50. So the Vibrobites are now 70 plus tax. Joanne, hello. Kendra. Heavyweight. How are you? Yeah, that's the way I treat pretty much anything, Brian, when I'm testing my tank, whether it's the pH or the temperature. You know, I'm not doing scientific experiments here. I don't need exacting, you know, if it says 79 degrees, but it's really 80, I don't care. If it says 79 degrees, that's close enough. I just need the general idea of where the tank is sitting. If it said 72 degrees, I might check to see if the heater's still working, you know? But as long as it's in that ballpark within a degree or two, when I check the pH, I just use basic pH paper. So it gives me just whole numbers. It's either 6, 7, 8. You know, I don't get the fine-tuned pH because I don't really need the fine-tuned pH. I just noticed that this Anubias, after 100 years of being in this tank, actually has a flower spike on it. Cassidy, hello. You got your crayfish. Nice. Voyager, hello. Speaking of moss, so I've got this moss growing here, and this is all one big piece of wood. This piece here, and then this piece sticking up in the back that goes up quite a bit, is all part of this huge piece of woodwork in there. And yes, it was a fucking nightmare getting it into the tank. This is a separate piece. This is actually a tree branch, or a whole tree. That's what's left of the roots. And it was a real small tree. And I cut the branches and everything off and just left the top part on. But over the years, moss has gotten on it and started growing. I've also got this one here hiding behind the pile of Anubias. This used to be laying across the top, but it fell in one day and I just left it there, and it's been lying in there like that ever since. But this one also has moss growing on it. I was saying the other night, I was explaining that there used to be a fungus, mycelium was growing in there. I guess is some kind of weird fungus still on it. I don't know what the hell that is. But I used to get really cool mushrooms that would sprout down off the bottom and wrap around, and I'd get these big mushroom caps sticking off of it. So I thought that was pretty neat. But this piece of woodwork right here, sticking out of the water, that used to have moss growing on it. And again, it just sort of got there. I didn't really put moss on it. It just kind of attached. If you look through here, I've got lots of moss growing on stuff in here, but I did put moss in this when I established it, but it's really taken over and it's growing all over every damn thing in there now. But that piece of wood, when I did a big water change recently, the piece of wood fell over and was underwater for a few days, and I didn't realize it. And by the time I got to pulling it up and standing it upright again, the moss was just gone. There's goldfish in there, just absolutely destroyed it. So no more moss for me. I am going to leave you here for a minute. Again, I can't raise the camera, but I do think I have another mic stand. I don't use an actual tripod. I use a mic stand. It's smaller, easier for me to maneuver around than a full tripod. But I do think I have another mic stand in the other room that I bought to replace this one, but then fixed whatever was wrong with this one at the time. And so I just left the other one in the other room because I knew someday I'd need it. So let me see if I'm remembering that correctly or if that was just a complete fantasy I made up. And I even know where to look. Oh, look at that. It says mic stand right on this box right here. I bet I've got a pretty good idea what's in it. All right, let's open this puppy up and see if it's actually a mic stand like it says it is. I don't see why it wouldn't be. It says mic stand right on the box. And usually if I label something like that, that's for a reason. Well, would you look at that? A brand new unused mic stand. It's still got the piece of cardboard stuck in the top. All right, let's get this puppy set up. I'm probably going to have to set the camera down at some point. Oh, I see what that is. That's not the piece of cardboard stuck in the top. That's a wedge that I put in there because this didn't work anymore. This was that's what this is. This was the one that broke, and I just saved it because it was an emergency. If I really needed one, I could always use that. So damn it, we don't have a good mic stand to use, but I might be able to use my little emergency wedge and see if it works on this one. Let me just do an experiment here. All right, that works. So there's a little thumb screw on the side, and when you screw it in, it pushes against a little rubber stopper, and then that rubber stopper presses against the pole, and it keeps it from sliding up and down. And it's been getting looser and looser. Like no matter how much I tighten it, the pole still just slides through there. And tonight I tightened it so bad it just stripped out the threads, and now it just spins, and I can't tighten it at all. But I have a little popsicle stick that I have shaved into like a wedge shape, and I can push it between that rubber stopper and the plastic bracket, and it just sort of wedges it in there and jams it. So if it's working, it's working. I'm not going to mess with it. Oh, I get the Anubias blooming all the time. I've just never had that one bloom. Craig, how are you? Yeah, we got in there Friday night, and we removed about 84 pounds of Java moss. The next thing we're going to do, not tonight, but the next time we get in there and do some work, we are going to thin out the crypt a little bit because it is getting a little on the out of control side. It doesn't look as bad now that I got the Java moss out of there. But with the Java moss, like the fish were swimming through like tunnels they were carving in the vegetation, and now they can actually swim around and move a little bit. So I'm not super pressed on getting that crypt out of there, but it does need to get trimmed up here pretty soon. All right, let's have a look at the gourami tank that has fewer and fewer gouramis in it. I'm down to 2 gouramis. I was saying the other night, I don't know if I'm going to add gouramis back to this when I refill, start restocking it. I don't think I'm going to restock it in all honesty. I was just doing kind of a inventory of what's in this roll call or whatever on what's in this tank. And it's just so damn many fish in a 55, and some of them are pretty sizable. So rather than just replacing the gouramis when they die off, I think I'm just going to let the population of the tank get a little smaller. And who knows, if we get the population down to a decent density, maybe I won't have so much problem with the cyanobacteria and algae and all the shit that's growing in that tank. This is like the last tank that I still have those issues with. And it really is like an overstocked tank. This is stocked like I stocked them when I first got into the hobby. So that is leading me to believe that excessive stocking density is what's causing me the real issues with this tank. So as those last 2 gouramis die, and they will be soon, they're old. Gouramis only live, 4 or 5 years, maybe 6 if you're lucky. And they're at least, 6 or 7 at this point. There was 8 of them originally, and I'm down to 2. So they are clearly, fading away. All right, don't be shy, everybody. You can feel free to chat if you want. I'm going to do another dab. Haven't had any hash oil in a while. I got a little bit of weed the other day, and then I harvested my Hawaiian puff yesterday. And so I currently have some of the smaller, the popcorn buds, some of the lower branches, maybe about a 1/4 ounce total. Hang on. So maybe about a 1/4 ounce total. I threw in my dehydrator. I'm going to quick dry that so I can make some good hash oil out of it. The rest I'm going to let dry. Some of it I'll smoke. Some of it I'll make into hash oil later. But the cola and the whole top section, I'm definitely going to dry that properly. I'm going to let it cure. I'm going to leave that alone until it's ready. And I'll finally have some good, high quality, homegrown weed again. It's been a while. I got some stuff the other day that's actually really good. Bob, that discus looks awesome. Steve always spends some time looking at that when he comes over and hangs out. It's definitely one of my more impressive fish. Don't know. We didn't spend a lot of time looking at the 125, and there was, it's kind of hectic while we were looking at it. But if you get a good look at my pearl cichlid, Mr. Fabulous, especially with some light shining on him, he is amazing. I think overall the orange discus in here is probably the most fabulous. But because of the size of that other one, that's my most impressive fish. This is probably my most beautiful fish. And this angelfish is no slouch either. It's a leopard zebra. And it's got a lot more color in it than you would initially realize. And it has a lot more patterning on it than you initially realize if you just glance at it. But that is a really, really good looking angelfish. I'm hoping that orange discus comes out. I'll try to give you a little better look at him. So if he ever swims out into the light, it'll probably be helpful if I stop sticking the camera right in his face. But when that orange discus swims out into the light, it's just crazy looking. So, all right, we're going to skip over the 29. We got the angelfish in here. You can't hardly really see it, but trust me, there's an angelfish right there. Yeah, you can kind of see her. I got one tetra in here, and then I got some loaches on the bottom, but that's about it. We will come back and have a look at the Great Wizard Queequeg Quad. But first, we're going to get No Face, my betta fish fed. We just got some work done on this tank the other day. Got it cleaned up, looking good. Let's see, I forgot I don't have a thumb screw anymore. I got to pull my little wedge out. So that is No Face. I don't really know what to tell you on that one, Art. Yeah, Brian, they look amazing. I get compliments them on the time. Yeah, I knew what you meant. I always get compliments on them. I don't know if you've noticed, but I took the two that were in the 40 and moved them into my big discus tank. Unfortunately, one of them died after I don't know if it got bullied or whatever, but one of them didn't survive the transfer. But the other one did. And instead of turning bright orange, this one sort of changed to blue. So it looks more blue with like an orange background now, and it matches the other fish in the tank better. Plus, of course, I've got those orange rainbow fish in there, and I've got the orange mollies or orange platies or whatever. No, they're what are they? Yeah, they're platies. I got orange platies in there, And so it all just ties together really nicely. And so the one surviving one doesn't look as fabulous as the orange one in the 55, but he looks really good and strangely blue. You never know they came as, a pair and were, all the same color right up until I put it in this tank. And it's just completely changed to being more blue. I'm assuming it's the influence of the other fish. I don't know what else it would be. All right, everybody, we're going to heat my dab tool up again. It's got a 15-second warm up, and then it runs for 30 seconds, which is more than I need. So I don't know if I'm going to do it tonight or not, but that Hawaiian puff that I dried out in the dehydrator, if I didn't do the live stream, which up until quite literally 7:45, I was still on the fence about whether I was going to do it or not. But if I didn't, I was going to make some butane hash oil out of that Hawaiian puff. So I don't know if I'll do that after the live stream. I don't know if I want to get that started this late at night. But definitely tomorrow I'll be doing that if I don't do it tonight. But we really are going to be getting out of here in a few minutes once I get done feeding everybody. Like I said, we'll get the Great Wizard fed. And then we're going to just go ahead and wrap it up. So we're doing Vibra Bites in here. And here is the orange one I was talking about. You can see how small it is compared to the other ones. But it looks kind of orange on camera. But you can see the blue in it. And if you see it in person, it looks really blue. It almost has like a base layer of orange with blue over top of it. Again, it's absolutely gorgeous, but it looks completely different than the other one. I'll go get my phone and we can zoom in on it once it settles down a little bit. I've kind of burned myself out on watching Doctor Who. So lately I've been watching a lot of like 1950s and early 60s sci-fi. I have been getting a kick out of it. The shit we didn't know back in the 1950s and the scientific explanations they come up with, all the ideas of what they thought space travel was going to be like and how they depicted it, and the different types of rocket propulsion and whatnot. It's absolutely hilarious. The one I heard tonight was probably the best like crazy 1950s science I've ever heard. It was a early 1954 maybe. It was a Japanese movie, and all these things kept just like floating up into space and disappearing, and they couldn't figure out what was going on, and like buildings were breaking apart, and obviously it was just filmed upside down and it was falling, but it looked like it was flying up into space. And so the scientists explained what was going on by telling us that, as you know, an object's gravity is caused by molecular motion. And therefore, when you cool an object down, you reduce that object's gravity. And if you can cool the object down to absolute zero and bring all molecular motion to a state of rest, you will remove that object's gravitational force, and it will basically, I guess, just float up into space. Because, if it doesn't have gravity, obviously it's like a fucking helium balloon and goes straight up in the air. But that one just absolutely killed me. Gravity is caused by the molecular motion. Like everything walking around has its own little gravitational force from the molecular motion. Well, technically, we do have our own tiny little gravitational force, but it's from our mass, not from our molecular motion. But that just killed me. So apparently, if you get something cold, it'll weigh less. And if you get it cold enough, it'll just float off into space. I'm waiting for that orange one to come out closer. I'll try to zoom in on it a little bit. And once again, as I'm standing here, I know it's not real obvious, but the glass has a lot of green film on it. So you're really getting sort of a reduced look as it is. Well, oh, holy crap. I didn't realize I could zoom in that tight. Oh, let's see. Where's it going now? Of course, it went down to the other end of the tank. Oh, there it is, swimming around in the background. All right, I don't think it's going to cooperate because I don't even see it anywhere in the tank at this point. So let's get the Great Wizard fed. This one's looking pretty good, I think. All right, I'll stop doing that so you don't get seasick. Let's get the Great Wizard fed. All right. I'm going to try to get the whole tank in, and then I can use the actual app to zoom in where I want. That should cover most of it. So wherever she goes, I should be able to keep her in the picture. So we're going to drop the blackworm pellet. And again, they'll fall straight to the bottom for the most part, and she'll stay in one spot once she starts feeding. All right, let's let her find her food. Once she settles in, I'll zoom in on her for a little bit, and then we'll start winding down for the night. So make sure you subscribe if you're not already, or tune back in. I usually do Friday night at 8 and Sunday night at 8. Again, not every single week. You know, if I'm not feeling like it, I don't. But most of the time, I'm Friday night and Sunday night, I'm live. And if you want to follow along with the 125, now that I've removed the filter from it, this is just an experiment. Every tank I've done it so far, bar one, I have had great success with just removing the filter. The next one we're going to do is the discus tank we were just looking at. That's going to go filterless pretty soon. But we're going to watch this 125 for a little while just to make sure everything's cool and I'm not running into any issues, or I don't go through any weird changes or algae explosions or anything. And if it does go well, we'll go ahead and do the other 125 as well. The only tank I've ever taken the filter off of and then had an issue with was the gourami tank. And there's two reasons for that. One, we've already discussed, it's way overstocked, and I have so much algae and cyanobacteria in there to begin with. And then secondly is that tank has predominantly sand on the bottom, and there's just no place for anything to break down and go. It just lays on top of sand. And so it would get dirty really quickly with the, all the fish in there pooping and it not be going anywhere. And so that tank got kind of overgrown and turned green and had a bunch of mulm and crap all over the bottom, like really quickly. And it became apparent that as that tank stands now, that one still needs a filter. I know my 129 I could, my 29 I could take the filter off of, because that, I hardly ever change the filter pads on that one. So the filter on that tank is absolutely nothing more than an elaborate power head, essentially. But it's only a little hang on the back filter, so I just leave it there. And I just, that tank has just ticked over like a clock for so many years now. We can almost say decades at this point. that I'm just not going to fuck with it. I'm just going to leave it alone until something changes, and then I can do something different with it. I did blow out the light on the top, so I do need to get in there and try to do something with the lighting. All right, let me get caught up on some of these comments. Yeah, the ball on the string is a good idea. Do you have it hit your windshield or do you have it hit your front grill? Oh, good for you, Robert. I've gotten rid of it before. Hey, Harry Mom. Yeah, depending on the room you've got your fish in, if you've got it in a room that you occupy and you're not one of those people that likes the room chilly, most tropical fish are fine in normal household, 73, 74 degrees. You really don't need heaters in most of your tanks. My tanks are down here in the basement. So even though I don't keep any of my tanks above 80 degrees, I do keep them in the upper 70s, anywhere from 75 to 79 degrees. And I need heaters for that. I've measured tanks, unheated tanks down here in the mid 60s before. And that's too cold for tropical fish. I can't go that low with the temperature. I did get a Bashir. I only got the albinos, and I used to have a bunch of them, but I went through a bad spell. I went through some pretty serious depression and got really lax on tank maintenance, and I wound up having this tank crash a little bit, and I lost several of the rainbows years ago. But the other three that I thought, and I had them for like 4 years before they died. Honestly, when they died, I kind of thought it was just from age, and I sort of expected the other ones to die as well. But that kind of kick-started me into getting in and cleaning the tank up, and I've been maintaining it ever since. And the three that survived are just still in there after all these years. They've got to be 7 or 8 years old now. So if they ever die off, my next goal is to get Bosmani rainbow fish in there because I always wanted them. Yeah, I don't like sand. Or should I say I hate sand? Greg. Oh, thank you. Windshield, nice. That's the way to do it. See, I went the other way. I used to do very frequent water changes, and the longer I kept fish, the less frequently I did them. And now I do them very infrequently. I don't even remember the last time I did a water change on the 29. My 55 with all that crypt in there, it's been, I don't know, it's been a couple of months probably since I've done a water change on that. I'll go a month or more on my discus tank without doing a water change. I tend to find that the less I mess with my tanks, the better they function. But it depends on how you've got your tank set up. I'm very much a believer that people should set their tank up however they like it set up. And depending on how you set it up, you have to maintain it accordingly. Some tanks are set up to be very low maintenance. Other tanks require more maintenance. Just it depends on your style and your sense of aesthetics, etc. The tanks that are the easiest to maintain are the ones that look like they're the hardest. If you don't really, know a lot about fish keeping. Not saying here anybody doesn't. I'm just saying in a general terms that when somebody looks at one of my tanks and sees, all the lush plants and fish, and it looks like a really sophisticated tank, and it would be complicated, but it's not. It's that level of sophistication is what makes it so easy to maintain. I hardly have to do anything to them. The really, really simplistic tanks that have, no or very little substrate in the bottom, maybe a couple of plastic plants or pieces of plastic decor, those tanks actually require more maintenance and attention than tanks that are, well established, heavily planted, lots of nooks and crannies and rocks and pieces of wood and all that kind of stuff going on. But I've always been of two minds about sand. I like the way sand looks, but functionally, I don't like the way it behaves. And so I tend not to use it. I haven't taken it out of the tank it was in. In fact, the tank you're looking at has a predominantly sand substrate as well. You can see I added an additional, it was like 2 bags of the sand. It's all eco-complete, but they make a sand version and then they make a bimodal. It's a mixture of sand and larger gravelly pieces like you can see there. And so I had sand in that tank and I wanted to add more gravel. So I added another bag of the eco-complete, which added more sand, but it also added some gravel. But if you look around, there's areas of the tank where you don't really see gravel at all. It just looks like it's got a sandy bottom on it. So I figured that'd be perfect for this kind of fish. But you can also see all that crap that's lying on the ground, all that brownish, grayish looking material. That's leftovers from yesterday. I threw a bunch of stuff in there. Those are old algae wafers and the snails all chewed them up and that's what's left. So it just sits on the bottom. Even when that breaks down and deteriorates completely and turns into loam, it'll just sit there. And so I got to get in and back all that stuff out. So, everything has its pros and cons, and that's for me the only real, the other con I would say is depending on how you've got your tank filtered, you definitely want the filter intakes well away from the bottom if you have sand, because any fish kicks any sand up, it'll get sucked right up into the filter. And depending on the kind of filter you have, that sand, that grit can get in the impeller and stop it from working. I've had that happen before. But again, if you put a sponge intake, or you keep the intake well away from the bottom or whatever, you can avoid that for the most part. But as far as the stuff breaking down and having nowhere to go because the sand is so densely, packed in there, there's no interstitial spaces. There's nowhere for the stuff to go between the grains of sand. And that alone is why I don't like it. Oh, that sounds cool, Robert. Yeah, an established tank is easier to maintain, but, and this is my opinion based on my own personal experience, the best, you're never really going to get a tank to fully establish and mature if you're in there constantly doing water changes on it. That, again, was my experience. It wasn't until I started leaving tanks alone and doing minimal amounts of maintenance on them that I really began to see my tanks season in and develop. And, that's when my tanks really started going to the next level and looking like tanks I had just set up and I'm still struggling with, permanently. They always looked like I just set them up and I was struggling with them. I used to get in and clean and scrub all the glass down to keep everything as algae free as I could. And I just messed with them all the time, trying to keep them as clean as possible. And it just never allowed the life that needs to develop in a tank. Again, the fish are the least important thing in the tank. The fish can only exist in the tank if all of the other life is present and healthy. And so maintaining your bacterial cultures and maintaining the tank's natural biome is far more important than the fish themselves. As long as you maintain that biome properly, then the fish will be fine. You build the foundation, the house is going to stand on it. If you're constantly messing with the house and ignore the foundation, sooner or later, you're going to run into problems. That biome living in your tank is the foundation of your tank. It's the most important life in there. and just leaving that alone, because every tank's different. Every tank's got its own unique biome. Every single one of my tanks is different than the other ones. I'm sure they all have similar bacteria and microbial life living in them, but how much of this species versus how much of that species, kind of like your gut biome. Everybody has their own personal gut biome based on your body chemistry, your diet, everything else. And your tanks are the same way. And the only way that biome is ever going to truly establish is if you just let it develop. You got to let those cultures culture in. I have no idea where she went. I got lost rambling. Wasn't even paying attention. I don't know if it's beneficial necessarily, Harriman, to fluctuate the temperatures. I know sometimes reducing the temperature for a few degrees for even a few hours can trigger spawning. And I know that while again it may not be necessary for a fish's health, fish can, as you say, they, if they swim from the surface down deep in the water, they might go through a 4 or 5 degree temperature change just, swimming down like that. So when I do water changes, once again, early on, I used to like measure the water temperature and make sure it was the exact same temperature as what was in the tank. Now I just, if it's a big water change, I'll just kind of eyeball. I know where to turn the faucets. I know kind of how much hot water to add to get it about where I want it. And if I miss it by 3 or 4 degrees at the end of the water, that's fine. I don't really care. If I do a small water change, I basically use just straight up well water. It's 50 degrees or 55 degrees going into the tank. But if I'm only doing a little top off or something, 4 gallons or 5 gallons of really cold water going into a large tank isn't going to change the overall temperature hardly any at all. So I don't get real hung up on worrying about the temperature shifting a little this way or that way. Yeah, Robert, I used to do the yeah, that's my Bashir, the Great Wizard Kui Kwai Kwan is her name, or Kui Kwai Quad. I'm not. Is it Kui Kwai Quad? I think it's Kui Kwai Quad. It looks like it's spelled Kui Kwai Quad, but it's Kui Kwai Quad. Anyway, yeah, I got a Bashir, or a Polypterus if you prefer. Well, it's a dinosaur Bashir is one of the common names. It's a Senegal is the more common name, but some people call it the dinosaur Bashir. And in fact, the Petco that I bought it from for $9.99 does sell it as a dinosaur Bashir. And I didn't even notice until Steve pointed out when he was here the other day how much orange is in the tail fin of that fish. And when you look at it really closely, it's got all kind of little dots and markings and patterns on it that I never noticed before. It's got a lot more going on. It just kind of looked like a bland sort of tan looking fish to me until, again, Steve was really looking at it. And, he was pointing out all the dots that go down its side. And there's these patterns on its head. And then, of course, I never really also noticed how orange its tail fin is starting to get. I'm hoping as it gets older, that orange will color in more. Well, it looks like she's done for the night. I don't know if you can see her or not, but she's hiding in her little cave over there. Oh, she's back up and swimming again. She looked like she was laying down, like she was done for the night, but she looks like she's done for the night. So we'll go ahead and wind it down here, call it a night. She does not eat the snails, but she definitely eats the shrimp. That's why I've got them in the tank. That's a natural food source for her. I had about 50 of them in there, but it's down to, I don't know, maybe a dozen. So she's definitely eating them, but I'm going to kind of wait and see if they kind of breed fast enough to stay ahead of her, or do I have to add shrimp from time to time? but I breed shrimp in 3 different tanks. And so if once a month I got to throw 50 shrimp in there, I'll still have more shrimp than I know what to do with. So it's not like I'm going to run out of them anytime soon. She doesn't devour them, but they do get, eaten over time. Oh, you're quite welcome, Brian, and thank you again for the fish. Everybody enjoys them. And I don't suppose there's any need to bring the camera all the way over here. I'm going to have to order myself a new friggin' mic stand. God damn it. I just keep getting further and further in debt. It's killing me. Maybe we'll just struggle along with what we got. It seems to be working well enough. Anywho, I'll give you guys a couple of minutes. I'll do one more dab. That'll give you a moment or two to say goodnight. While I'm doing that, I guess I'll bring the camera over. Let me turn this light out before I forget. I only turn this light on when I'm looking at it myself or I'm, doing the video. Otherwise, I keep that one turned off. It's not necessary, and reducing the light in there reduces algae growing on the front glass and, excessive algae in the tank. Although with those shrimp in there, there's no such thing as excessive algae in that tank. All right, let me wiggle the little wedge out of here. Wiggle the little wedge back in. That wedge actually seems to work better than the other thing. Maybe we'll just stick with this and I'll save myself some money that I don't have. All right, everybody, let me preheat my little seahorse here. 3 clicks gets it going. And again, I got to give it 15 seconds of preheat. You can see it's already getting hot enough. Eventually it'll start glowing down there. I don't know if you can see that little orange glow developing. There you go. It's pretty good. The next batch I make will be better because I'll be making it out of the Hawaiian puff, even fresh cut. That's going to be amazing. And it'll also be better because I will make it, I'll do a quick wash and I'll use butane. And I'll have a much better product after I'm done doing that. So, all right, everybody. Cheers. So thanks for hanging out again. I hope you guys enjoyed yourself tonight. And don't forget to stay tuned. And we're going to see what happens with this tank. If you weren't here in the beginning earlier, we took the mechanical filter off this. I do have sponge filters on it and some power heads and air stones and stuff, but there's no traditional mechanical filtration on this. I disconnected the canister filter that was on it. So we're going to see how well it does with no filter. And if it needs to go back on, it'll go back on. I don't think it will, but, I'm up for being wrong. I've been wrong before, so we'll see what happens. If it needs to go back on, I can always do that. So tune in, or stay tuned, I should say. And I will see you all, members. I'll see you guys on Wednesday, and everybody else, I'll see you all next Friday. So long, and thanks for all the fish, and good night.